So, hi everybody, welcome to this week's discussion, which is called Straight Back to Spinal Health. We are recording this session and automatically by default you are muted. If you would like, if you would prefer to keep your camera off, that is fine, but we will be recording this and then we'll be posting on our website tomorrow for you to reference back to. All right, so Man, did you want to get started on just discussing the general importance of spinal health?
Of course, yeah. So
hey, before we start, we have an agenda, right? Can you highlight the agenda? What we're gonna?
Okay, so we're going to start off with a general discussion about spinal health, and then we're going to show you the anatomy of the muscles that support the spine. And then we have a special guest speaker that is going to talk about her personal experience with spinal injury and recovery. And then we will continue to talk about other things that can impact spinal health. And then we'll open up for questions and answers.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
So we went over this briefly when we went over the working from home webinar and how we talked about like the proper sitting techniques. Hold on, I'm getting a.
You disappeared.
All right.
There we go.
Hold on. Could you see me? All right, I got a call. Sorry about that. So yeah, we went over this with the work from home webinar about how important it is with the proper sitting posture. And so the thing about spine health, it's one of those things that you don't realize it until it's gone. So it tends to be taken for granted until one day you wake up and you throw your back out and you can't move for a week. That tends to be when people really notice it. So your spine it's quite literally the backbone of your ability to move and function properly. So why should we care about it? So like without a healthy spine, basically every type of movement, everyday movements, every task could be difficult. So things like just sitting up straight, things like bending down to pick something up, walking, twisting, anything. When the spine is injured, or even if we take a step further and say when the muscles that attach to the spine are injured, you're basically, the daily movements that you go about doing could be jeopardized. So when you look at the spine itself, you're thinking three major functions it has, okay? So number one, it's protecting the spinal cord. So it kind of forms like this protective wall, this protective barrier around half of your central nervous system. So I guess that's kind of important, right? So, and then secondly, it provides a structural support. So it keeps us upright. And then third, it enables us to move. So by its design, it's like it has that special design S-shaped curve. It allows for proper weight distribution from our upper half to our lower half while we move. So that's pretty much as far as the construction of the spine itself, the bone part. So just to recap.
Go ahead. No, sorry, you mentioned that it's the kind of thing where you realize that you lose your spinal health when it's too late, right? Or just when you realize it's kind of too late, right? Is this driven by trauma? Is it like some sort of gradual thing? What's the typical pattern that you guys see?
There's all different types of spinal trauma or spinal injury. There is something like trauma where you say, you throw your back out. There's herniations of the discs. There's congenital issues such as, scoliosis, which we'll talk about and stuff like that. But mostly what we see as massage therapists are more so imbalance. The same thing that we go back to week after week is the imbalance between stronger muscles versus weaker muscles in the body.
Mm-hmm. All right, that makes sense. So it seems pretty important somehow.
It's a little important. Yeah. So yeah, just to recap. So you have the spine, it's 24 individual vertebrae stacked one on top of each other. And in between them is this kind of their disc. It's like a gel disc, and that's what helps support. That's what absorbs the pressure.
Yeah, we totally lost Martin there.
Just disappeared.
So I don't know where I was going with it, and obviously I'm not the expert. So do you want to maybe? Did you want to share your experience, Faye, while we wait for Martin?
Yeah, let's do that. So Faye is a lifelong runner. She has been a great member and client of Filler Massages for years. And she's just generally an awesome person. And even though she's a South Philly resident, she is joining us from Paris tonight. So thank you, Faye, for being here and sharing your story.
It looks like Martin's back though. Do we want to go back to him or still
No, go.
Me?
Let's
go.
Okay.
No, we're jumping.
Okay, sounds good. So my spinal injury happened about 2 years ago in spring of 2018. It was, of course, when I was getting into phenomenal running shape and had a 5K PR, a 5-mile PR. This was in March of 2018. And then in April, I remember doing a race and some workouts, and I just couldn't understand. I felt physically fine, but I just felt like I had no power in my legs. And then leading up to Broad Street, I was on the track with some friends doing a workout, and the workout was going fine. And then during the rest periods, all of a sudden I was getting shooting pains down my leg. And I would start running and be fine, and I would stop and the pain would come back. And then on the cool down back to my house, I had never felt pain in my leg like that before, and I just wanted to crawl home. So actually that same day I went and I saw Olivia and I was like, I don't know what's going on. I have this crazy pain in my leg, and she massaged it and it felt better. And then, but the pain would come back. A week later, I realized I was limping, not because of the pain I had in my leg, but because I physically lost the ability to push off the ground with my toes. I had, I guess, a medical like foot drop. So after going to several doctors, what I learned was that I had 2 bulging discs in my spine that were compressing a nerve, which, as Martin had discussed, that the spine surrounds our nervous system. So one of those discs was pressing on a nerve, I believe my sciatic nerve. I used to know all the medical terminology, but probably the S1 nerve, I think, and had aggravated it. And that's why I was getting pain all down my left leg. And I lost the ability to use my left calf muscle to properly, push off my foot, and I lost a little strength in my left hamstring. So after, I guess, about a couple months of physical therapy and doing a lot of movements to help with the spine health, to help try to move the disc back into place, which worked a bit. I started to get some movement back. I was able to do some toe raises, but I eventually plateaued and just, a runner and just a human not being able to walk and do normal things, I went in and I got surgery where they cut away the part of the disc which was pressing the nerve, and then a long rehab, and I was able to get back running. But an important part of all of this was certainly massage therapy, because with the nerve aggravating the muscles so much, it helped to kind of relieve the stress on the muscles and the pain that I was feeling. And from what I understand, and obviously I'm not a doctor, but the massage kind of almost made room for the nerve to kind of relax and heal. So that was very beneficial for me.
And so your, you said the bulge in the disc, like, okay, so if you think you're not technical, like, just I'm a dumbass when it comes to this, so I'm going to ask you a question.
That's fine. I don't know if I'll have the answer, but
what caused it in the first place?
So that's actually, I wish I knew the answer to that because then I could tell everyone, like, don't do this and you'll be fine. I have several theories. It could have been sitting too much and then getting up and not properly stretch. I have a desk job. So, if I'm sitting hunched over and I don't have proper spinal alignment and then I get up and go for a run, I'm sure that didn't help anything. And then maybe sitting down right after a run to get back to work right away.
So you're saying don't do exactly what I'm doing every day.
Probably. Or just be more aware of what you're doing. If you're getting up to run, warm up your body. When you come back, don't sit down right away, So I think that could have been it. I was lifting that spring more so than I had been. And I don't know how much that contributed because I felt like I was always super cautious with my form because I didn't want a spine injury. So it could have been that. I also, my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt all had issues with their spine later in life. They were never athletes. So I don't know if I just exacerbated a genetic thing in my family. From what I understand, though, after 30 years old, we all have some degenerative disc disease. Most of us are walking around with bulging discs. Some of us will have symptoms, some of us won't. So as Martin was saying, the health of your spine, you don't realize how important it is until all of a sudden you lose it. And then you're kind of overly aware of how you're sitting, if you're sitting for too long. And, for me, there are certain things that I know if I'm about to do, there are certain stretches I do before and after, because I kind of fear aggravating my discs because surgery is not going to prevent it from happening again in the future.
Right.
And what did your recovery from the surgery look like? Like, how did you gradually get back into your routine again?
Sure. Well, before surgery, I was doing a lot of physical therapy. So I had already a lot of the stretches and exercises that the PT had given me. A lot of, if anyone has spine issues, there's some, and I'm sure you guys know this, the McKinsey method of how you kind of work your way into different types of press ups to help the health of your spine. I'm sure that's something Martin will talk about in a little bit. So I had been doing physical therapy beforehand, and because I couldn't do any type of cardio where I was using my legs, like with any type of impact, I was swimming a lot. So what I did for after surgery was I did the same PT that I had already been doing. It took me a while to get back to where I was, obviously, because you have to kind of heal from the surgery. And I continued swimming just as a means to activate all those muscles and help the recovery. But after surgery, I was very strict with myself about not bending, lifting, or twisting, or doing any of those motions that would upset the work that the surgeon had done on my body. So I think just being super cautious and listening to the doctors and getting massages. What's that?
No gardening, I said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone asked.
It's just
no what?
It's I would just say no gardening. That's fine. It's just
right. No gardening for sure. Yeah, it's funny to think about certain household things that all of a sudden, if you're told you can't bend, lift, or twist, it's like, how do I unload the dishwasher right now?
Yeah. All right. And so how long have you been back then? Properly.
So I had the surgery in July of 2018. By September, I was running for 2 minutes at a time and then building on that. So I would say by winter, by like January of 2019, I was more into a routine of running consistently. And then by February, I was able to start playing with some speed workouts. But it took a while.
Yeah. Well, better than not coming back at all, I suppose.
True. Yeah.
And you mentioned before that you kind of are very cautious now about making sure you warm up adequately and not sitting down immediately after running.
Yep.
Do you have anything else you've incorporated into your routine just to kind of prevent, maintain and prevent, essentially? Do you find that certain stretches help you, or certain techniques? Any cross training that you add in? Is there anything?
Yeah, well, the stretches that I added in, if there's one thing that I do before I run or before I do any type of physical activity, it's these press ups, which are basically like an upward dog, where you lay on your stomach and, you know, kind of push up and get that arch in your back. And what that does is kind of, from my understanding, and I'm not a doctor, is to help the disc kind of move back into the spine a little bit. Not that I'm sorry.
You do this before a run?
Yeah. And I think it also helps to warm up. I'll also do things to warm up my core. I think something that maybe a lot of runners neglect, because, you know, you are doing a lot of twisting motions. So if your core isn't adequately warmed up and your muscles aren't engaged and ready to go, I want to do everything to take the stress off my back. So that's been helpful, I think. I do certain nerve glides.
Could you give an example?
Martin actually helped me. What's that?
Could you give an example of, you said you warm up your core? Like, I'm genuinely interested because I'm not doing any of this. Now I'm scared. So could you give an example of the warm up of the core?
Like a dead bug? Sure, like a dead bug, anything kind of with where you're stabilizing your core with a twisting motion, because that's what we do when we're running.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll do that, or certain Pilates moves. It's because I'm across the ocean, I'm sure.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you in the middle of your statement.
No, that's okay.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I asked a bunch of questions, so I feel like. How are you feeling about not being able to compete against other people?
Right now? During confinement?
Yeah.
I found a way by competing for crowns on Strava. And I think there are some fast women in the area where I'm at right now who have been gunning for me once they realized what I was doing. So it's been rather entertaining.
Nice. I can't get myself to do this. I don't know. I feel like I think I need to see the fear in somebody's eyes when I'm running against them. Otherwise, it doesn't do it for me. So I've been very lazy.
That's fair.
So moving on. Sorry. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. My internet is bad, sorry.
Mine's actually not great right now either. The other thing is, if you wanted to ask a question, you could use the chat box as well down below. That's if you didn't want to. Otherwise, just unmute yourself and then you can ask. Faye, I think you were just starting to talk about nerve gliding there.
Yes. And that was something that I learned through PT. I wouldn't necessarily show what I did, because from my understanding, when I learned it, there were like certain levels. So I wouldn't want to demonstrate, I guess, how I do it. I think that's something more for professionals who understand how that works.
Okay. But did you find that that helped you though?
But yeah, my understanding, yes, because especially if my muscles weren't functioning appropriately, it was a way to kind of how did they explain it to me? I guess like give nutrients to the nerve to help it kind of recover from being damaged by the disc in my spine.
Okay. All right, good.
Faye, I have a
All
question.
right. Well, does anyone have...
So when you say that you're...
Sure.
Oh.
Someone's gonna...
Sorry, I'm on delay. So when you were... So when you said that that you're doing like core activation pre-run, do you know, how do you notice that when you finally eventually go out for your run? Do you feel like you're putting in a little less effort in the workout? Do you feel like things are just moving more smoothly, or can you feel that engagement, that waking up of the core muscles helping with the run itself?
When I take the time and do a warm-up routine, like I always intend to, like a good 10 minutes or so, I always feel like my form is better at the outset, and things do move a little bit smoother and easier. If I go out the door without doing anything, I just feel like it takes me longer to kind of get into the rhythm. So, if you think about a mile or so and how many steps that is on the ground where you're not with a smooth form or your muscles aren't ready, I think that's a lot of damage that we can put on our bodies if you're not fully engaged. So that's why I do try to make sure to take the time to do that.
Makes sense. So,
all right. Does anyone else
I'm going to
any...
have to move on to...
Hey.
Sorry.
You got to pick it out?
Yeah, I gotta go out to another meeting, but thanks for sharing this. I think I'm, as usual, feel like I'm not doing enough, and he's gonna come back and help me at some point. But appreciate you taking the time, specifically being at the other side of the world. So I let you guys continue. You guys have a good one, and I'll speak with you all soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Paul. All right. Okay, we definitely have developed a delay on this call. But does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Faye, is there anything else that you'd like to share? Also, I'm loving your represent run PHL.
Oh, got to. And then of course, whenever I'm doing fast workouts here, I try to wear a Philly running something just so people know in Paris where the fast runners are coming from. No, I nothing else. I'm happy to answer questions if you get any in later. And just a shout out to the team at Phila Massages, because when I was going through this, you guys were incredible. I think I saw several of your massage therapists during that time, and it just, I would come in a lot of pain and leave, and it always made me feel better. And it was just, so thanks.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for tuning in the middle of the night. We really appreciate it.
That's great to hear.
Appreciate your support and you being.
Of course.
All right. Okay, so Martin, should we kind of continue to pick up where we left off before?
Yeah, we can just start discussing like the common back muscles, get into a little bit more the anatomy side of things.
Okay.
If you want.
All right.
Or...
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to share my screen because Alana has put together some great photos for us to, or images for us to show. So can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So here we have just the general muscles of the back here. Looks like we've lost some people off this call. So Martin, would you like to, do you want to kind of break it up muscle by muscle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or? Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to go about it. So okay. The back, when you're thinking about the the back muscles, like with a lot of different muscle groups, you have to think layers. So you have the superficial layers, which usually consist of your traps, your rhomboids, and your lats. And these are all things that move the shoulders, scapula, even the limbs, like so the arms that we talked about in a previous webinar. Then you have like, your mid layer, those are like your serratus, posterior muscles. And then you get into the deeper layers, which are the ones that are really kind of like the backbone for the muscles of the spine. So you got the Erector Spine. So these are the ones that will extend and flex and laterally flex the spine into movement. So those can be, broken down like, so it's like layers. So the first one, the one that most people know about, it's your trap muscle. So your traps are one, as far as area goes across the body, it's one of it covers one of the largest areas on the back. So all the way up from the base of your skull down to the mid back, and has a number of different actions. It's responsible for a lot of different things. Primarily, the main one is elevating the shoulders. So if you were to just stand up and if you're just to stand up, hanging your arms by your side, you're activating the traps. If you shrug your shoulders, you're activating your traps. If you pinch your shoulder blades together, you're activating the traps. If you look up, you're activating the traps. So it's because it's such a broad muscle, it connects into a lot of different areas, so it has a lot of different actions. So that's one that we as massage therapists work with a lot. And then, so I guess what we discussed is activating it and stretching it. So next would be the next, like I guess, sublayer, rhomboid muscles. So the rhomboids, they kind of are in between the shoulder blades. Yep, so perfect diagram. Thank you, Olivia. So they attach on the medial border of the scapula and then onto the spine itself. I think it's like what, T2 to T5, the spinal processes. So their main job is to stabilize the scapula and then also retract the scapula. So when you think of strengthening it or activating it, think of a rowing motion, anything that will pinch the shoulder blades together. So a lot of times with people who have back pain in general, we go back to that overstretching the muscle causing weakness, and not so much over contracting the muscle, which is causing the pain. I'm sorry. So by doing exercises and activation exercises that strengthen the erector spine, the rhomboids, the traps, those are the ones that are gonna, eventually help with the back pain. So like I said, anything with a rowing motion is going to help with the rhomboids. So bringing your shoulder blades together. As far as stretching it goes, you can do stuff like bringing the arm across, simple one everybody knows about. So bringing your arm, protracting the arm across the chest, that's going to stretch the rhomboids. Next, what we have is your lat muscles, another one that covers a pretty large area on the back. So it's along the side. on the bottom. So the distal attachment is actually on the crest of the hip, and it goes all the way up and it tucks underneath the armpit into, actually onto the humerus. So the bicipital groove of the humerus. So what this guy is responsible for is, so it's shoulder adduction. So bring in the arm from, say, 90 degrees down. So when you think of things like pull-ups, you're activating the lats. So things like that. So stretching the lats, or things like, you know, putting your arm up on a wall and just leaning into it, that's going to stretch the lats as well. So it's a big muscle. Again, just like with the traps, pretty superficial muscle, but it can be, because of its size and how many actions it does, could be a problem with a lot of people. The lats actually have a big role with anterior pelvic tilt. So because of where they attach on the side of the hip there, if they're tight, if the lats are tight, they will turn the hips anteriorly and give you that kind of a duck butt kind of posture. So people who, you know, do a lot of pull-ups and, you know, have bad posture, that's sometimes to check in and see if the lats are a culprit. What else we got? We got levator scap. So this one is a favorite amongst massage therapists. So this is one, a lot of people will come in with shoulder and neck pain. So you can see where it attaches up into the cervical spine and then onto the superior border angle of the scapula. So this guy is responsible for things like lateral flexion, so bringing your ear to your shoulder, and then also just elevating the scapula. So things like shrugging, you're also activating it as well. And because it's such a small muscle, it tends to get overused a lot. So it seems to be one that people overuse and have issues with. And again, a stretch for that would just be, you know, taking your ear to shoulder on the opposite side of the one that hurts, and then playing with the angle of your chin. So if you rotate it down, you're going to get it more into the levator scap region. So a lot of these stretches and activation exercises, if you do one for one muscle, like say for the traps, if you do this stretch for, you're also getting the traps, you're also getting the levator scap. So you're kind of getting two birds with one stone here. And then finally, one of the more common ones is the ones that we talked about, is the erector spine. So these are the ones that run parallel to the spine. The ones that can easily be palpated on most people, and pretty visually dominant. You can see them on a lot of people. So you have 3 different sets. So it's like 3 sets of, I call them cables, on either side of the spine. And what these guys are responsible for are pretty much just keeping you upright, keeping the spine upright, keeping it stable, spinal flexion, spinal extension, and then spinal lateral flexion and extension. This is one that a lot of times you're chasing what the issue is with a lot of people who have back pain when it comes to the erector spine. So what I mean by that is sometimes people will come in and they have real strong erector spine. I mean, these things are like cables. And I mean, you would think that would be, you know, something good, because it's supporting the spine, it's keeping you upright. However, it's doing so much of what the other extensor muscles are supposed to be doing. So if they're, say like the glutes could be turned off. They can have very weak glutes, and their erectors are just making up for that weakness. Sometimes we see a lot of that. And then people who don't, who also have back pain, are in that hunched position. Their erector muscles are being over lengthened, overstretched, and that's where the pain comes from as well. So when you start to do exercises that strengthen the erector spine, things like Superman's, for example, things like bird dogs, things like, I mean, it's pretty basic things that just need your body weight for. They can definitely help with the spine.
So here are some examples. This was in our self-care series today, this week, sorry. So these are the reverse flies. Here are the bird dogs that Martin was just talking about.
And then finally, the last one is the QL. So this is another one that, because of its size, it's a very small muscle. It tends to get overworked and do a lot of the things that, taking on a lot of the jobs and responsibilities that the bigger back muscles should be doing. And this guy is located, if you feel your bottom rib. So depending on what your bottom rib is, whether it's the 11th or 12th, some people have 12 ribs. So if you feel the bottom of your rib, and then just slightly feel the top of the side of your hip, that's, if you dig in there and you activate your hip. So this one's called the model muscle. So if you ever see a model on a catwalk and they have that hip hike, that's the action of the QL muscle. So if you just slowly hike that hip up, you should feel it jump into your hand when you do that. So that guy gets overused a lot, which requires, you know, stretching and massage as well. So those are the basic ones, but as you can see, there's a lot of things that attach into and around the spine that kind of make it as a, you know, a whole moving system.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then basically this, with the exception of the QL, is kind of what all of those muscles look like together. So you can see their position on the spine there, and the QL just runs right down here between the bottom rib and the top of the hip there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Martin, maybe we should reference this this article now, which I probably should have done before, I'm sorry. But sorry, this article was from the self-care series this week. So it's strengthen and stretch for a healthy spine. And in there, Martin has recorded some exercises that you can do for all the muscle groups that surround the spine.
And then stretching as well. So don't forget, that's also important.
Yes, very much so. Actually, here's an example of rotation. And then, of course, this one here is everyone's favorite, or mine anyway. The child's pose. All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think one of the things to touch in on too was the other article that's in there with I believe it was Joey's article, the importance of correct spinal mechanics.
Can you see my screen there?
Yes. Yes. So this is something that it gets introduced a lot to people who are just either coming into like some kind of like I don't want to say it's only strictly for people who do weightlifting, but if people are coming back from an injury, this is a real broad, easy base into the rehab. And I think it's a really important stage. So at the very core of proper biomechanics, before you even can begin to move, you need to make sure everything is properly grounded. So you need to be able to know, like you have to be able to be conscious of what a solid base is supposed to feel like and what's supposed to be engaged and how it's supposed to be engaged. So the goal of, you know, proper spinal mechanics is to have all three structures, being your shoulders, your hips, and your spine, as one unit, while embracing the core at the same time, while also doing correct breathing techniques. So if you look at just the basic photos on the blog, I mean, it looks really simple. I mean, it just looks like basic standing posture. However, if you were to go and like do these, if you're not used to feeling what like a broad base and a grounded base is supposed to feel like, it could become pretty taxing. So things like, you know, just making sure that when you're grounded on the standing position, having equal distribution in the feet, in all 3 points of your feet. So I call it the triad points of your feet. So the big toe, little toe, and heel, and making sure that you're able to feel all 6 points on both feet before you even do anything. So from there, you know, you come into a pretty just basic squat position. You can come into a seated position, but while doing so, embracing the core, embracing the hips, and still feeling that same weight distribution in both feet. So it's something, it's more of I mean, people who are just getting into like Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting, before you even pick up a barbell, they're having you do these types of movements, because if you go ahead and throw load onto something like that and your biomechanics, your form is off, you're talking some serious spinal damage that can happen. So it's a really good, easy base to kind of just become aware and conscious of where things are supposed to be, where you're supposed to feel engagement at. So I thought that was a really good topic to bring up.
Wonderful. Then here's an example of a functional movement. All right. Sorry, I'm just referring back to the agenda. Okay, and I guess, you know, there are some other things. There are so many different things that can impact spinal health. As Faye was saying, you know, she isn't even sure, you know, what caused her injury. So definitely posture, but you know, these are things, you know, as Martin was just saying, you know, these are ways that we can be very purposeful in what we do, but there are certain things that we do that we don't always think about. Like, even if I'm just considering myself right now, I'm leaning to one side and I have one leg crossed over the other. But another big thing is sleeping position. So you spend a lot of time sleeping every day, and it's very important to make sure that you set yourself up, you know, to maintain a healthy spine in your sleeping position, so that we don't you know, develop these imbalances. So we do have an article, I don't have it up here, but I will share it in the chat box. It's just basically, it talks about the different sleeping positions and how they impact different areas of your body. So that's a good read as well.
I don't know about you, Olivia, but I get that question so much, as far as people asking me how I should be sleeping.
Yeah.
And after so many times, I just kind of gave up, because I know I don't want somebody telling me how to sleep, and I can't offer that kind of advice. But the thing is, every sleeping position has pros and cons. So when you take like side sleepers, for example, it's great for circulation, especially if you're on your left side. So that's good with circulation. However, it's also bad for your cervical spine, because your neck is cocked to one side like that. And it also puts a lot of pressure on the lumbar spine, the low back. And then also it's restricting blood flow to the arm that's you're laying on. And so there are ways around it, as far as, you know, putting a pillow in between your legs, and switching maybe halfway through the night. I mean, but it seems just like a lot to deal with. And then, so, you know, stomach sleeper is another one. It's great for digestion, right? It's good for digestion, but it's also it's bad for low back pain. Again, there's ways around it where you can put a bolster or pillow right underneath the front of the hips to help kind of take the curve out of the low back. But again, how many times do you go to bed with that pillow and wake up with it in the same position? And then, back sleepers, it's probably, really good for spinal alignment, but then also its con would be, like your respiratory restrictions as far as your neck alignment. So it's like, there's pros and cons to each sleeping position, and it's all a matter of how you look at it. But like for me, I think when it comes to sleep habits, things like nutrition, alcohol consumption, temperature of the room, white noise, all these are more determining factors as to what constitutes a better night's sleep. But yeah.
Were there any questions about that? I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen now. There we go. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Nope, no questions.
All right.
I have stories if you want those.
Sure. Do you want to share a story?
Sure. Yeah, I never actually realized the importance of the muscles along the spine growing up, because they usually don't talk about that in school. And in high school, I actually injured my back playing football, and a couple weeks of physical therapy, ice and whatever, they sent me right back. But nobody ever gave me a proper evaluation to see if the muscles were prepared to go back to the rigorous training of being an athlete. And come to find out, they weren't. So for years, I learned to adjust and overcompensate using muscles that weren't supposed to do the alignment. And as a result, those muscles became overdeveloped. I didn't realize that it was limiting my range of motion. Even when people pointed it out, I gave them an excuse. Oh, my butt is big. That's why I can't straighten my back out. And it actually took Martin massaging me, giving me the tests of the strength tests to my back to realize that those muscles aren't doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, and everything's adjusting around it, and I guess assisting in loads that they weren't built for. And over time, those muscles do get tired of trying to help, and they will give out or create more injuries. So it is very important to make sure that you test these muscles after injuries to make sure that you are ready to go back to training or whatever you're doing, because you can adjust for a short period of time, but after a while your body will get tired and start to break down.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So one of the tests that they do for like injuries or trauma to the spinal and trunk extensors, it's called the Sorenson Test. You can't really do it by yourself. You kind of need somebody to do it. So what you would do is, if you were on a massage table, you kind of have the client, they're face down, and you kind of have them move. So half of their trunk, half of their upper torso is hanging off the edge of the upper half of the table. And then you're holding them at the back of their ankles. And then you're just having them come into an isometric back extension. And so that's what that's doing, is it's testing the strength of the Erector Spine. And I think they say like usually 2 minutes is what's gonna equal, a healthy spine, and then you don't start to see any kind of teetering from side to side. So that's one of the ways to test those muscles in particular.
We actually, we do have an article that describes that test as well. So I'm going to share that in the chat box. That was from our first self-care series, I think. It's nice to reference back. That's it there. So the first one I've shared is the sleep on it, and then the second one is comprehensive overview of lower back pain. All right. Okay, so Martin, should we talk about, I guess, some of the, or does anyone have any questions so far, or any stories, anything that they would like to share? No? Martin, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I mean, I guess like a few fairly straightforward ways to protect your spine. Just one, and most importantly, is watch the technique of how you're lifting things. So I know we have a couple, or a lot of people come to our offices who work in the medical field, who are either nurses or somebody who requires to lift patients. And a lot of times they're coming in with back issues, back trauma issues, because of improper lifting mechanics. So they're lifting and twisting at the same time a lot of times, and that's what causes things to spasm up. So one of the ways just to help with proper spine health is proper technique. So you always hear lift with your knees, not your back. And you can have somebody tell you that all the time, every day, drill it into your head. But I tell you, first time when you lift with your back instead of your knees, you'll know it. And then like what we said before, proper sleep is a good one. Actively stretching. So stretching is, especially as you get older, you don't need to be doing a lot of load-bearing exercises. So keeping the spine mobile, keeping a healthy body weight, so you don't want to be carrying around excess weight, because your lumbar spine is what's going to be taking the brunt of that. And then finally, staying hydrated. So proper hydration is what's going to help maintain the elasticity of the soft tissues, and especially in the discs, the discs that we talked about in between the vertebrae. It keeps them lubricated. So all of those things are just things to keep in mind in going forward.
All right. Wonderful. And again, I'm going to post a link to our self-care series for this week, so you'll be able to reference all of the articles that we have discussed and shared with you. Any other final questions?
Nope, not from me.
No? All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here this week. We appreciate you joining us. Next week, we are going to be talking about the hip. So be sure to tune back in next week. We'll be sending out some fun articles, and yeah. Anything else, Martin?
No. Thanks, Mom, for tuning in again.
Yeah, thank
you.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye. Lovely to see your faces, and it's very interesting.
Good.
I've got lots of tips this morning. And also I'll make sure I won't sit too long.
I've never known you to sit for too long, Mum.
No, that's true.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome.
good one.
Bye.
Bye.